Jeff, always good to chat. Today, let's talk about interviewing. I know I actually have done some interviews not too long ago, so this is helpful for me. Curious when you're doing interviews, conducting interviews, what types of questions do you ask and why? What are you looking for in that process?
Yeah, great question. I think it largely depends on what you're interviewing for, of course. So, in a more junior role, I'm a big believer in hiring people that are just, that exhibit a good deal of intelligence and will, and work ethic. Whereas in a more senior role, you generally want somebody who's more experienced. So, for example, if you were hiring like a CFO, you would need somebody who has a lot of experience playing with numbers. You wouldn't just hire somebody who thinks that they would work hard and figure that out. But within that, I try to test for different things based on what I'm looking for. So in a more junior role, you're going to need somebody that's going to be coachable and somebody who takes feedback well, because by nature of being in a junior role, that's something that's going to be important for their growth and professional development. And I think people oftentimes, make a mistake of asking questions that are just too direct, very overt, like are you coachable? Of course, people will say yes to that question. And a better question would be to ask somebody to give an example of a time where they made a mistake and how they were given certain feedback and how they incorporated it into becoming, better at their, in life or their job. And you want to understand, are they going to answer that question honestly, right? Something else that I've done with junior folks that I've interviewed is actually put them through some sort of exercise, whether it's writing a cold email or doing some sort of pitch. And then I'll give them my feedback. And then what I'll do is I'll ask them, like, what do you think about my feedback? Because what I'm testing for really isn't whether what I'm testing for there is really to understand, was the first thing that comes out of their mouth something that's defensive and trying to position themselves as actually being just like a great candidate, or somebody that's reflective upon that feedback and actually says thank you and treats it as like a growth opportunity. And you can learn a lot just through the subtlety of how people respond to those things, and you're testing them, right? It's similar to kind of like an objection you often get is about pricing in sales. And so what I'll do is I'll test. I'll say, like, well, if it was free, would you take it? Like, would you use it if it were free? And that's, to me, it's not, I'm not going to give it away for free. I'm asking that question because I'm testing if my prospect is being honest that that's their only true objection. Because if the answer is no, then I know that there's something deeper. There's another objection, right? So what I try to do is not ask questions directly. I don't ask, are you coachable? Are you smart? Are you this? Are you that? I test for those things. I try to ask questions that prove whether or not somebody is accountable, has a work ethic. When you're testing for work ethic, give me an example. Show me that you work hard. Everybody will say that they work hard, but is there a story about a time where you locked yourself in a room for 8 hours making cold calls all day, making 250 or 300 cold calls in your first job out of college or something like that? Because if I can hear that story, that's a much stronger way of telling me that you work hard than just telling me that you work hard. So I try to just kind of plant those seeds to figure out, if I'm getting what I'm looking for. But everyone has a different approach. I know you and I kind of chatted before this, and I know you test for some other things. So I'd love to hear, what you look for, Carson.
I love how you made that delineation too, as far as what types of roles you're looking at. I think that's critical, because at the end of it, you want to visualize this person in the role. When I'm hiring entry level type positions, often what I'm looking for is that personality, and it's less about experience because they may not necessarily have it, but even experience that they've had in college managing a robust project. And some of the setbacks that they may have experienced can help me, because as an interviewer, I'm looking to mitigate risk. I'm an ambassador of my brand, and I'm making sure that we're entering into a contract. In my opinion, I'm agreeing to be the person who provides resources or training or coaching and development, and make sure that they're privy to everything that they're entitled to from my organization. On the flip side, they're pledging to be the person that they agreed to be on interview day. And so I've got to, make sure that I understand how viable is it that this person is going to be successful in role. I'm doing nobody a favor if I don't truly understand how they will handle some of the challenges that they'll face in role. To your point as well, if you look at some of the more senior roles or even manager roles that I've hired for historically, some of the things that I'm looking for are very experience based. So I may try to paint a picture or a scenario that help me uncover how have they set the foundation for success? How are they thinking about the role? What do they need to put in place? What framework is going to be key for them to be successful in role? How might they put together a 30, 60, 90-day plan? I think those are becoming more and more prominent. They're almost table stakes now as far as some thought process, as far as what that looks like. From there, how do they view ongoing training? How do they view working as part of a team? Even if you're an individual contributor, it's very probable that you're going to be working with a large group of people. How are you planning to engage from a customer perspective? And then other unique elements that they may bring to the table. If I'm able to uncover their superpower in that short amount of time, and you kind of alluded to this, I would love to know the unique approach that they're going to take to make them stand out. Let's face it, a lot of roles have hundreds, if not 1,000 applicants. So it's very key to look for those people that are not only going to shine, but also have the lowest risk to hire. You want to see somebody perhaps that has had experience in this realm, because it's going to help you understand ramp time. How have they tackled ramping up in a role that is maybe built similarly to the one that I'm hiring for. Furthermore, if there is a scenario that I can paint, we both work in sales. Let's face it, sometimes sales cycles don't go exactly the way we want them to. So how have maybe they had the foresight to put the foundation in place for a deal before? And as they've handled setbacks throughout the deal process, maybe a customer has gone dark, maybe a milestone wasn't delivered as it was anticipated. How did they pivot? How did they react and respond? What transpired? And if they had very heavy reliance on other people, or maybe they went to their manager first, as opposed to grappling with it with the resources that they had, working with the customer directly. And frankly, how did they handle uncomfortable situations with teammates, with customers? The more we can uncover the type of experience that they've had in this realm, the better. It helps it minimize risk from my perspective. So those are a lot of the things that I'm looking for. I think interview styles have changed a lot over the years. My interviews that I do today are very different than they did 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was interviewing people. And I think a lot of that is because, frankly, again, I take very seriously that deal that we form between the hiring manager and ultimately somebody who works as part of that team, because we are making a commitment to one another, and I want to make sure that I understand and that I'm delivering the right person to the organization, and that I'm bringing them on board into a situation that I believe they can thrive in.
Yeah, I love it. I love the situational awareness. And it's kind of like I remember when I was in college looking at jobs. I interviewed for some consulting jobs because I didn't know what I was doing, and they would ask you all these questions about how you figure out how many pennies there would be in a mall or something like that. But that's obviously applicable to the consulting world, because they want to know how you think through certain problems. But it's similar to a sales setting. You put somebody in that scenario and you say, hey, how do you think about this? Not necessarily with the lens that there's a right or a wrong answer, but to help you understand someone's thought process and whether or not they think in the way that aligns with your company's culture. I think that's a pretty astute thing that you do.
Completely agree. I think it's important that there's compatibility with the culture and also with what the job is going to entail. But it's so great when you can see a personality rise out of that as well, because you're ultimately going to want to see somebody that can bring that positive mindset to bear. It's just that's a tough thing to gauge. How are they going to react and respond to the rigors of the role for the months and potentially years to come? There's always going to be risk involved in that for both sides, but provided we take that seriously and we do the best to be transparent with the process and put them in a situation to win, then I think everybody's got the best chance of success.
Awesome. Love it.
Good stuff, Jeff. Hey, always appreciate our chats. Hopefully this resonates and helps somebody today, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.